When I need answers to a problem that I'm wrestling with, I usually reach out to a mentor. We all want sage advice, right? But what if you could DM the ultimate expert on everything? But you can't. So stay tuned. Whether it's guidance about a career, family, personal struggles, we all need wisdom and direction in life. Is your immediate instinct to go to a parent, spouse, best friend, pastor, maybe Confucius for wisdom? I can assure you that the Chinese philosopher, or anyone else for that matter, they have nothing on God's wisdom. But how do we receive it? Psalm 111:10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all those who do His commandments. His praise endures forever." Scripture can sometimes be complicated and difficult to translate into everyday life. This passage talks about fearing the Lord. When we think of the word fear, we might imagine someone being scared, frightened, or even panicked. But that's not what this verse is referring to at all. The word fear here means to have deep respect or reverential affection for God. Once we embrace that place in our hearts, the doors of understanding and wisdom open wide to us. That's what the fear of the Lord is all about. Let's learn this verse. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. With me now. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now the next part. A good understanding have all those who do His commandments. Knowing the will of God and following His commandments are two different things. Those walking in His will have a good understanding, in part because of their teachable hearts. Again, with me. A good understanding have all those who do His commandments. Here's the reality. God bestows wisdom on the obedient. It's that simple. The next part says, His praise endures forever. When I first read this phrase, I wondered if the psalmist had changed the subject. It just didn't seem to fit. His praise endures forever. When we gain godly wisdom, we see a clear picture of His splendor, the magnificence of His works. So with those images in our minds, we can't help but raise our hands and voices, praising His name. Say it with me. His praise endures forever. And so too does His eternal character. Let's say the entire verse now. Psalm 111:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all those who do His commandments. His praise endures forever. God knows us intimately. Whatever answers we need in our lives, we'll find them within the one who created us. The same Father that Scripture says knows the number of hairs on our heads. Think about that for a sec. 7 billion people on the planet. Each person has roughly 100,000 or so hairs on his or her head. That's a lot to remember, but not for God. He also numbered the stars in the sky and named each one. There are approximately 200 billion trillion stars in the universe. I can't even wrap my head around a number like that. The point is, God created each one of us with a specific purpose in mind. So when you feel you are lost, He knows exactly where you are. We can trust Him to guide us back to the path He designed for us. His direction is divine. James 1:5 encourages us this way. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all, without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Let that marinate for a minute. Wow, let's learn this comforting verse. It's made up of 4 statements. The first one, if any of you lacks wisdom. That's pretty much all of us, right? Say it with me. If any of you lacks wisdom. Then what? You should ask God. Again, inquire where? You should ask God. It seems obvious, but honestly, how often do we try and figure out problems on our own when going to God would have been a much better idea? The next part proves how unselfish God is. who gives generously to all without finding fault. That's God's character. He doesn't reserve his wisdom for a VIP crowd. Instead, he's a God who gives generously to all without finding fault. He's not sitting in heaven counting your questions saying, I'm so sorry, but you've exceeded your question allotment for the month. Could you contact me for the answer to that one next month? No question is trivial to God. So ask away. He wants to hear from us. And when you ask, his promise, and it will be given to you. God takes pleasure in rewarding us with wise solutions. Again, with me, and it will be given to you. Let's say the entire verse. Do you remember the verse reference, the address where it's located in the Bible? James 1:5. But you probably knew that. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all, without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Here's a challenge for you. Tell me the address of the first verse we learned today. Hint, it's in Psalms. That's right, Psalm 111:10. What is this verse about? If you said wisdom, you're spot on. Do you remember what it says? What's the prerequisite to wisdom? Sounds like a game show question, right? It's the fear of the Lord. Great job. One of the keys to memorization is testing yourself. Here's the next challenge. What's the second verse we learned today? Hint, it's in the book of James. Nope, not that James. Yes, James 1:5. You're doing great. Do you remember what James 1:5 is about? Ask, and God gives generously. I know that you're saying the whole verse at home now because God gives generously with memory as well. A key to memorizing scripture is convincing your mind to keep those verses you've studied readily accessible. So keep challenging your memory. Work that magnificent muscle. Those are our verses of the week. Now go with God and remember, He is ready to give you all the wisdom you need as you learn scripture by heart.